Now, a new report is sounding the alarm about access to water around the world. The World Resources Institute says a quarter of the world's population doesn't have enough water to meet the demand for drinking, agriculture and industry. And that number is set to increase.
Burning coal, oil and gas is fueling the climate crisis. The Earth is not only getting warmer with more intense heat waves, but droughts are also an increasing threat. Water is becoming increasingly scarce worldwide.
We're going to see a lot more competition over the water resource. And that means in years where there's less water, and we're seeing more and more of those years, someone's tap will be turned off, right? Someone won't be able to access that water when they need it. And that could either be water for, power production, if we're thinking of the MENA region. That could be water for households, water for food. So the stakes are really high here.
25 countries are already affected by an extreme lack of water. It's having severe consequences for people, access to food, and local economies. Countries in the Middle East and North Africa are the hardest hit. By 2050, all people in the region will suffer from extreme water stress. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka are also among the hotspots. Besides climate change, excessive water consumption by agriculture and the industry is the main reason for the crisis. While water consumption in the global north will barely increase in the coming decades, it will more than double in the drought-stricken sub-Saharan Africa region. This is mainly due to the expansion of agriculture for export. To prevent dramatic crop failures, a more sustainable use of water is needed. But this is lacking in more than half of all countries.
So that's going to have huge implications, especially on our agricultural industries, which are so dependent on the timing and quantity of water. So I think this is a really important issue to keep in mind as we're going into COP, as we're going into these big climate discussions. We can't afford to leave water behind, but we don't see it being mentioned as a priority, something that we should really be thinking about in these conversations.
Many of the hotspot countries will need financial support to better manage the water crisis. And time is running out to make sure everyone in the world has access to the water they need.
Well, that report was produced by DW reporter Tim Schauenberg, who joins us now. Welcome, Tim. One bit of good news, I suppose, from this report from the World Resources Institute is their prediction that water demand in the US and Europe will plateau in the coming decades. Does that mean those regions won't face water stress?
No, definitely not. Just because your and my tap is running regularly, it doesn't mean that these regions don't have water stress at all. We have seen droughts in the US, we have seen severe droughts, extreme droughts in southern France, in southern Spain, in France even with conflicts, violent conflicts over water, in Spain as well, protests by farmers. So just because the projection that there won't be much more demand in these regions doesn't mean that these regions, US and Europe, do not extract more water than they actually have.
So how do we tackle this issue?
Well, first of all, limiting climate change. Limiting climate change means limiting more extreme droughts and more extreme heat waves. So secondly, there's a huge waste of water through bad water infrastructure. 30% of global freshwater is wasted through leaks of pipes, meaning freshwater is already being treated on the way to the consumer, is it households or industrial production, and just through a leak, it's basically wasted. It's a waste of money and energy. And thirdly, water treatment. Particularly in the global south, in low-income countries, there's huge potential to reuse the water which is already in the system, and by that also preventing to contaminate the natural water resources that we already have, rivers, lakes, through sewage or industrial wastewaters. Those resources are essential to secure future water supply.
Well, why aren't countries most threatened by water stress investing more in sustainable water use?
Well, low-income countries have huge debt. They're basically facing a debt crisis, and that makes it difficult for them to access financial resources, money, on the international financial markets. And Therefore, they are demanding from international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund, like the World Bank, which are dominated by rich countries, to give them more financial space, they call it, to basically build up the financial capacities to at least invest, to adapt in climate change and invest in sustainable development. Additionally, they ask richer countries for direct support. As rich countries are historically responsible for climate change, they demand, give us direct money so we can build up the capacities. This discussion has been going on for years now and will be once again one of the top priorities at the International Climate Conference in Dubai, taking place in December this year.
Thanks for that, Tim. Our DW reporter, Tim Schauenberg.